all of our meetings. And we really hope this is going to be interactive as much as it can be. So Eureka's going to explain a little bit more how to do that by raising your hand, your virtual hand. But please, we want you to participate, ask questions, respond. It's kind of a unique opportunity for us all to meet virtually and share ideas in a very unique situation.
Yeah. Okay, so first some just logistics for Zoom, because I've been on a couple Zoom calls where people don't have their microphones muted and we have a lot of background noise or people are talking over each other. And in order to eliminate that, what we did was we muted everybody upon entry. So you guys are all muted. And so if you have a question or you want to respond to a question, at the bottom, there's an option to raise your hand. And so you can raise your hand and or you can just type your question directly into the chat, and then we will moderate the chat. So if you raise your hand, that means you want to be on camera and you want to speak out loud. And then if you have an answer and you want to respond, go ahead and type in the chat box request to unmute. And or if we kind of open up the forum and we say like, okay, do we have any, does anybody want to respond? Then you can unmute yourself. We're just trying to really limit the overlap of multiple people. And yeah, basically Stephanie and I are just going to really help facilitate this discussion. And as you guys know, that this is the topic of today is Drive and Google Classroom with screen readers. And the reason why we felt like this was so important is because obviously with everyone going virtual, it's like, how do we get our work to our students? And a lot of people have already been using Google Classroom. And if you haven't been using Google Classroom, now you're kind of forced to use Google Classroom. And if you're not using Google Classroom, then maybe you're using Google Drive.
And Eureka, before you continue, I'm going to go through our poll. You might all be curious how people are feeling right about now. So we have 23% of those of you that responded are feeling cool and collected. 74% of you are surviving / doing your best. 3% are frenzied and confused, and thank goodness nobody is about to quit. So that's a good thing. So we'll have another question for you in a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and turn that off now.
Cool. Okay, so really like this forum is an open roundtable kind of discussion, and especially for us to be able to share resources, so we're not kind of like figuring it out or trying to reinvent the wheel and spending a lot more time trying to figure it out rather than, you know, just being pointed to a resource in which CSB is already created and or, you know, resources that many of you guys have already created. And we kind of, you know, during our tech meeting last week, we just kind of like put our heads together. We're like, what is the best way which we can support teachers, and how can we get our resources out and be more collaborative? Nice. And so this is kind of what
Come here. Oh, come here. Hold on.
We heard you, Doug. I muted you. But Doug, you were saying hi to Nick. Nick Frank, you're very popular here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to share my screen. And I want to point you guys in the direction of a bunch of resources that CSB has put together. And not only for during this time, but also for especially with the Google Suite with JAWS. So I'm going to share my screen. All right, so if you go to our CSB website, which is csb-cde.ca.gov. Stephanie, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen.
And then the quickest way to get to our resources is in this search box in the top right-hand corner. If you type in Google and press enter, the first search result that comes up is Curricula and How-To Guides by the AT team. And if you click that, it kind of gives you these curricula that we have created: Braille note takers, web navigation with screen readers, iOS, smarter balance things. And then you're going to click this Google Apps with JAWS. Stephanie is also going to like put the link into the chat. So if you want to just copy and paste that link, you can do it that way. And so what it takes you to is our shared Google Drive for all of the things that we have created in regards to Google Apps and using JAWS. Not just only JAWS, I think we have some things for NVDA, but it's primarily used for JAWS. So the two that I actually specifically want to cover in this session is enabling Braille support in Google Docs. Actually, before I do that, there is something called enable screen reader support. And let me make sure it got moved. Hold on, enable screen reader support. Okay, so the reason why I want to bring this up is because if you guys have accessed Google Docs or Drive with JAWS and it keeps saying blank, 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 like you can see the cursor go and you're pressing the down arrows and it's moving, but it keeps reading blank, it's because you don't have enable screen reader support turned on. And you can do this by just pressing Control-Alt-Z. What's going to happen is on the Google Doc, right here, right next to the help, you will see something called accessibility. So if you don't have screen reader support turned on, like I don't have it turned on right here for mine, you don't see it. Another way that you can go through it is you type right into the help chat search box, screen reader support, and toggle screen reader support. So you can just enable that. And so you see that now it says accessibility. Okay. The second one that I want to share with you guys is something called enable Braille support. So if you are using a Braille display with Google Docs or Drive, which all of your students who are using a screen reader should also have a Braille display. If you do not have a Braille display, then please send me an email. Stephanie, can you put my email into the chat? And yes, I will send you a link to a lending library. We created something called the lending library. And so we do have extra Braille displays in which we can send out to your students. So just making a note, I know that there are some people here that are not from California, and CSB, we support the state of California. So I'm not sure, Adrian, if you want to chime in if we can loan outside of California, but generally we don't, because we only support our California state. But I'm not, okay, yeah, that's what I thought. But so our lending library is something that, you know, we created because we had an excess number of equipment that were sitting in our closet, and we're like, why not get these into the hands of students and TBIs to try. And especially with everything that's going on right now, we're happy to lend you a Braille display. Sorry, that was a side tangent, but you know, we feel really strongly about like our kids having Braille under their fingertips and not just listening, right? It's what I say when I do trainings, it's like the difference between listening to something versus reading it with our eyes. And then with a Braille display, the student is able to actually, you know, read it with their fingers. So definitely get them a Braille display if you don't have one. All right, so the second thing is on a Google Doc or Drive, you have to enable Braille support. And similarly, how I went into that help search box, you can just type in Braille, and then it'll say enable Braille support, and you enable that, and then just refresh the page, and then you should be getting Braille and voice. Okay, anything you want to add?
No, you're doing a great job.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. All right, so this is really a roundtable discussion and Q&A. We did get a list of questions from all of you guys who filled out the Google form. And if it's a specific, that is specific to you, what we can do is we can reply to you in an email. So like if you have more of a generalizable question that you think other TBIs are also struggling with, you can go ahead and pop that into the chat and or request to unmute.
Eureka, maybe while people are thinking of their questions, throw up the next question.
Okay.
So feel free to answer the question and we'll share the results in a little bit.
Key command, okay, Angela Bao, key commands for Zoom meetings. That's a good question. And there are a couple resources out there. Scott, I know you were kind of looking into this. Did you have something?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. What did you say? Repeat that. I'm sorry. I was filling out your form.
There's a question from Angela asking for key commands for Zoom meetings.
I can put, yes, I did create one. I can put a link to it in the chat in a moment. Really, the most important one is how to turn off all of the microphones all at once when the people in the class are not cooperating. Yes, so what I'll do is I'll grab it and I'll put a link to it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Shonda asks, who is that bearded guy in the background? Would you like to introduce yourself, bearded guy?
He's a new employee.
Yeah.
I'm on the fold. We're looking for another Tech Lab employee, so I was considering going into incognito and applying. We're trying to scare COVID-19 away, you guys. You gotta not shave until sports come back.
Adrian does bring a good point up. We are hiring in the Tech Lab for a tech teacher and tech specialist position, as well as in assessment.
The assessment team is definitely hiring. We are looking for a seasoned TVI O&M, so someone who's duly certified, as well as if anyone out there knows of a speech language pathologist and a psychologist that would be interested in joining, and a great team and a great place to work. So please contact me if you're interested, or look at our website. I'll put my email address up as well.
And then you guys all know that, like, since there's things called like Zoom bombing or something, the links that we put into the chat are not automatic links, so you have to actually select it, copy it, and paste it over.
And Eureka, there's another question. It says, today I tried sharing a video with a student and he couldn't hear it at all. We could hear each other talking, but he couldn't hear the video.
Okay, you shared a video. How you can, I think this is this Diane Adams?
Yes.
I need a little bit more detail, like what kind of video, how did you share it?
So he had a goal to find videos on YouTube of low vision and blind musicians, because he's a drummer himself who takes lessons at the School of Rock in Elk Grove. And he reviews these videos, and as his final assignment, he has to write a paper on 3 of them, how old they are, what's their visual impairment, what sort of instrument they play. So we were going to look at another drummer today. I found a video of a 15-year-old drummer, and I shared it to his page, and I started playing it, and he said, I can't hear that video at all. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to make you a co-host, and you find a video and you share it to me. Same thing. I couldn't hear it.
So one response that may help you out is Cynthia Riley says on the share menu, there are 2 check boxes for streaming and audio. This is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. Is all of you out there have such fabulous expertise, and we're all dealing with different issues. So please chime in if you know the answer as well. It says bottom. She's saying bottom left corner as you're looking. And I'll go ahead and share the results. We have 40%. Oh, the question for our poll is, my students are using Google Classroom with, and you're supposed to select all that apply. So this is a rundown of what we are all using. 40% are using Braille note takers, 48% PC laptops with Access software, 7% Mac laptops with VoiceOver, 52% Chromebooks. 57% iOS devices, that's the winner. 5% Android and 2% other. So pretty much you are all very, very busy learning a lot of new devices. I'm gonna turn those poll results off. Oh, I can share them, I guess. Okay. All right. Eureka, do you want to maybe answer one of the questions that came through from the Q&A on the sign-in?
Yeah, okay, let me pull that up. You guys are all shy.
Yep, ask more questions, I'll keep track.
Okay, okay, first question, best browser for JAWS and Classroom. Can you change your browser if you're having trouble without shutting down JAWS, going between navigation region, main region, and mainly backwards? Okay. So yes, you can change your browser. I think what we are recommending, primarily what we use at CSB, is Mozilla Firefox. However, we are also finding that Google Chrome is working quite well. And so those would be the 2 that we recommend. Personally, I like Chrome. There are a lot of updates with Firefox. You have to have a specific version, like an ESR version, which is specific to screen readers. And so Google Chrome is something that I would recommend. And then without troubleshooting and shutting down JAWS. Usually, so a lot of times the troubleshooting techniques are either close the browser, restart the browser, turn off JAWS, turn it back on. And then the third one would be like restart your computer. Depending on what the issue is, that's kind of our go-to strategies for first troubleshooting. And then how to navigate regions from the main region or navigation region. So you can press R to jump different regions and to go backwards, because if you passed it, you can press Shift R. And so for everybody who doesn't know, anytime you're pressing any key command like L to jump links, R to jump regions, Tab to go next, any JAWS commands, you can combine it with Shift to go backwards. So a lot of times we tab, and then we're like, oh, we just passed it. And then you don't want to have to press Tab like 20 more times to go back around. You just press Shift Tab and it goes back. It goes backwards. It's like pressing up arrow versus down arrow. Okay. Eureka, what are your thoughts on Chromebox as a screen reader? That's a really good question, Rebecca. I think it's okay to share my personal thoughts about Chromebox is that it is not as comprehensive as JAWS. And unfortunately, I understand that in the districts, a lot of students are being given Chromebooks. And what we would recommend from CSB is that you request for a PC laptop with JAWS for that very particular reason. With Chromebox, it is different how to navigate. So JAWS and NVDA is quite similar in how it can navigate. Chromebox, it's almost a little it's a little different animal. And so there's quite a learning curve on how to navigate with Chromebox, and it's still not, I wouldn't say up to par as JAWS. Vanessa
Hang on,
or anybody on the tech team who want to chime in?
I was gonna start a new question thread so we can get to as many as we want. Doug is wondering, is there a way to see what the student page looks like so that we can better assist them? Doug, not sure, when you say student page, are you talking about on, not sure what device or what you're talking about?
Doug said, oh.
You unmute them and they can.
He's
Yeah, Doug.
unmuted.
Yeah, I'm at Google Classroom. We're just starting our students using that. They never used it before. So sometimes I wish I could go in to assist them getting through Google Classroom. Some of them don't have the ability to get into it yet and share their screen.
Should I take
So
this one maybe?
Go.
There's multiple ways. You can do it through Zoom itself. You know, having them share their screen and then you can see what they're seeing.
Okay.
When they're using a screen reader, it can get difficult because you can't really, like if they're say using JAWS, you don't have a cursor that you can see where they are. I've been testing JAWS Tandem. When you're running JAWS and Zoom text, I'm having the student turn on the Zoom text so that we can see the cursor, turning off everything else, and then using JAWS Tandem. So JAWS Tandem is a screen sharing JAWS to JAWS application. And then it solves the problem of knowing where they are, because before you could hear JAWS talk, but it was very difficult for the teacher to see where the cursor was. There's TeamViewer, there's Microsoft Remote Access. There's different, depending on which system you're running. But as simple as Zoom share the screen. Once the student shares their screen, you can see what they're seeing at least.
Okay. Thank you.
If you're both running JAWS, then you can run Tandem.
And Doug, Cynthia is also recommending in the chat. She says, I use a laptop to share and I keep an iPad signed into the Zoom meeting so I can see how and in real time what they are seeing. But sometimes there is a delay. So
All right,
she's
thank
using.
you.
Yes, all of these depend on internet. So if there's an internet bandwidth issue with anybody involved in it, it just falls apart. So that's a disclaimer.
All right.
Next week, we're going to be talking about using Tandem, JAWS Tandem, and probably some of the other options as well.
Other options include join.me or TeamViewer. You can share your screen with students and you can also take control of their screen with those applications. But also just a really simple way that I'm not sure if you've tried, and I don't know if you're you own the classroom if you're helping a student get into a classroom owned by a different teacher, but if you are giving the student the assignments, you can actually click on that student's assignment and you can both be viewing the same Google document at the same time.
Great. Okay. So are we ready for the next question, Eureka?
Yeah.
Okay. Miriam is asking, is Zoom totally accessible to a blind and or visually impaired person? If so, how? And can, I'm guessing that says can maybe he or she host?
I don't have the answer to that question. Does anybody, if you do have the answer, go ahead and unmute yourself and chime in. Silence.
I don't see why not, because you can right click on that person and have them host. And if they have all the Zoom hotkeys, all the commands that they need, they should be able to do what they need. They'll have to have whatever screen sharing that they want minimized, and I think they possibly would have to have it organized, someone totally blind, in a different fashion than the way that we have things. I save things to a folder when I'm going to screen share and annotate for my low vision handwriting students that I'm doing handwriting without tears. So I'm working with a low vision child who's going to look at the screen and watch me annotate to see how to write the letter of the alphabet, and then they're going to write theirs and hold it up for me so that I can see theirs. I don't see how it would be different for someone totally blind to host a meeting. I think it would be the same. They would just need to know the shortcuts.
So if I could chime in here, this is Thomas with HIMSS. I work with a ton of blind colleagues, and most of them are able to host Zoom meetings just fine. Really, the only thing is just understanding the layout and understanding how to navigate to different items. So, and remembering the keystrokes, right? So I believe it was Alt-A is mute all, or is to mute. Another good trick is if you have somebody muted, just pressing and holding the space bar will temporarily unmute you. But yeah, I work with a bunch of blind people that use Zoom on a daily basis, and it is accessible.
Thank you, Thomas. And also just to chime in with that, I mean, like there's so many features to Zoom as we are learning, like Stephanie and I are today, we're like, oh, let's make a poll, right? And so I think, you know, it even for a sighted person, it's quite difficult to like learn and navigate. But in terms of accessibility, I think on a basic level, it's with all the keystrokes and hotkeys, I think it is accessible.
And I uploaded the keystrokes for Windows, Mac, and not keystrokes for iOS, but some pointers on iOS.
Yeah, Scott, somebody said that they had a hard time downloading the Windows commands for Zoom. Could you put it as a link and not as a doc? Because it's uploaded on our drive, right?
I guess I could do it through Google, right?
Just put it in a share folder and then put it out as a Google Doc via the share folder.
Okay.
Yeah, we can reshare after the webinar. It is opening as a corrupt file.
Oh, okay.
Eureka, do you want to go ahead and answer one of the questions from the Q&A from the sign-in, maybe specifically to Google, just because that is what we advertised. So people might be really wondering about some of the Google Suite. Do you want me to name one?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I was waiting for you.
Okay. Let's see. Find a good one. Let's see. I shared a Google Doc with the same student, that contains images. I personally added alt text descriptions to every image, but we could not figure out how to hear the descriptions. I was able to hear descriptions on my laptop using JAWS, but we could not do this with his. Help, please.
Just right off the bat, it might be a setting in JAWS to enable alt text images. Adrian? Don't know.
I would think it's a JAWS setting. You can disable settings like that. You can also, it also could be a verbosity setting. So you could do something as simple as go through the startup wizard and check and see if the verbosity settings are standard. If the student is squirreling around in settings, which is a great thing, right? Like they're going around and searching, they have the ability to turn off and on a whole bunch of different notifications. I would start with checking verbosity settings in Startup Wizard, and if it's different there, you might be able to have a quick fix, which is under the help menu.
Yeah, I do think it's a JAWS setting because I do remember seeing that somewhere. You know, as a quick fix, I would say, like if just in the moment, quick fix, what I would do is I would just underneath the image, I would just write the description. So it's text.
Okay, and here's another one. And there's a couple of questions that related to Google Slides. This one is, can you, sorry, we're taxing you here, right? Can you go over using a screen reader with Google Slides? I'm having difficulty navigating line by line in slides and which commands will work.
Okay, yeah, I could totally do that in the next 20 minutes. That would take like an entire webinar, but I will tell you that Google Slides it is accessible. You just have to know how to jump the different frames, right? So in Google Slides, you have the left-hand side where there's each one of the slides, there's like 5 or so that you can see at a time. And then there's the main frame area, which has the one slide that is selected, right? And so you are able to navigate it by pressing Tab or I believe the JAWS keystroke to jump frames is F6 to jump to the other frame. And once you get to that, the main area, whatever is in that slide, which is like it might be like a text box or something, then you have to navigate each one of those text boxes. That means you have to get into the edit box, and then it'll just read the title. Then you have to get out of that and then go into the next section and then read that. And so it is a bit cumbersome. It's doable. It's cumbersome, and not the most recommended. I recently was on a Zoom meeting with a teacher who their teacher gave them slides. So the student is like, how do I navigate this? What I told her was probably the best and easiest ways for the TVI to extract the text and put it into a Word document so that the student can just, up and down navigate. Obviously, if you have a mainstream student that they are like going to be getting slides consistently, it's not something that you want to do, but like for in the moment and they need to submit the work like this week or next week, that would be like an alternative. And we just have to be flexible. It's like, do you want to spend 1 hour trying to teach them how to navigate, or do they have to like get the information and then submit the work?
Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and throw in my comments on this one. The question is how to support VI students with JAWS. So that's a really big question. And I would say, that also would take quite a long webinar. But fortunately, people are doing those webinars. I think it was Vanessa maybe mentioned there's one tomorrow about JAWS and their new tandem with Zoom text. And you can go on the CSB website, I will throw up the link. We have a resource list, one for teachers and one for parents. And we're updating it about twice a week with ongoing webinars that you can access. And there's been several up there about JAWS. And then it's also broken down into sections. And so you can look at the AT section, and on there are links, for example, to CSB's how-to guides. And there's JAWS information on there. So I think some of the best ways to support your students is attending these webinars, maybe even encourage your students, depending on their age and ability, they can attend these webinars. I mean, right now we're fortunate that so many of these things are free and we can sit at home and watch them. So maybe doing that with your student, and then certainly accessing the written documentation that's available. So I'll go ahead and throw up our link to the resource pages. So hopefully that will help you out as well.
Yeah, and I'm just like looking at the chat, and there's a lot of links that are coming through, and maybe so at the end, like tomorrow or whatever, like we can get our team to kind of just extract all the links and just say, to make it a little bit easier so you don't have to read through the entire chat to get the links that you need. Somebody did ask, how do you activate the link in a Google slide? And so if you're able to navigate to the actual link, you can usually, this is the case for Outlook and or Word, if you press Control Enter, it will activate that link. Otherwise, you can select the link, copy, and then paste it into the browser.
Just enter should work if it acknowledges it's a link. If you're running JAWS and it acknowledges link to, just enter by itself should work.
I'm thinking that if it's a blinking cursor and they press enter, then it'll just new line it.
Oh, if they're in an edit.
Because it's an edit field. Yeah.
I guess it depends on if they're view only or if they're in an editable.
Yes, that's true too.
So this
You could
is
also right click on it and say open link in new tab. So they could
Yeah.
do a shift F10 or an application key or something like that.
Application. So obviously, if the student is using a screen reader and not not a mouse, the application key, which is usually to the right of the space bar, it looks like a square with lines to it. And or if your laptop does not have that, shift F10 will activate the application key.
okay. I'm thinking this next question, I suspect a lot of you might have some good ideas. So the question was, and this came through the Q&A, how to organize assignments being assigned. How do I check for comments on assignments efficiently? And how can assignments be hidden after they were assigned or put in reverse order so the last assigned assignments are on top? And I'm assuming that is referring to Google Classroom. I know that my own children who are not visually impaired have struggled with keeping their assignments organized because every teacher in their middle and high school is doing it in a different way. And I can only imagine what our students that we serve are also dealing with, that teachers are organizing things differently. So yeah, feel free to chime in if you've come up with some good ways of helping our students organize.
Crickets. Well, how are you guys doing it? You know,
I'm
like
checking in Classroom real quick here.
how are you guys managing how to, you don't have to have like the best solution, but like share what's working for you.
Are we talking about how the student keeps it organized or how I'm keeping my Google Classroom organized?
I think this question says assignments being assigned. So I think it's how do we help our students stay organized? That's pretty much how I interpreted the question. But if you are the person that wrote it in, feel free to chime in.
I know that I separate my assignments by topic, and then if you want to like have it's gonna post it in the order you posted it. If you wanted it a different order, you can just drag and drop them within the list if you're in edit mode. I don't know if that helps.
This is Mallory. I think it also, I do the same thing. I have it in topics, and I think it depends on how the teacher is organizing it. But all of our teachers do it by week. So every week it's a new topic, and that's easy to navigate on at least the Braille note. And then if I have to assign an alt assignment or a different type of accessibility, I will assign an assignment just to that student. So you can uncheck all students and find the student's name. So it'll still pop up in the right topic, but it'll just get sent out to that one student. And I usually put like their name so they know to look for it.
This is Yana. I'm going to chime in a little bit too. I think it also organizes it by due date automatically. So depending on what the due date and due time you have for the assignment, it's going to put it to the top of the list for the student.
That's what I saw as well when I was just in there. I can't see how to flip it back and forth to make it go from one to another though.
I also think, you know, just if we're talking about like organizational skills outside of, I mean, this is transferable outside of just Google Classroom, right? Is like when we have a list of things that we need to do, how do we keep track of it? Right? Like so what I do is like I literally just like write it on a notebook. Like these are things I need to do. And then that way I have like one place where I can reference where all the things that I need to do are. And then as I'm done, I either erase it or I cross it out. You know, so this is also an opportunity to be able to teach your student, like, how do you keep track of all of your assignments? And even, you know, in Google Classroom, it could be like, you know, disorganized in terms of like when it's, how it's due by topic or by when it's due. But I know that organization is something that a lot of our low vision and blind students struggle with. So I think it's also an opportunity to teach them how to better organize.
And I'll chime in here too. I think this is what you were alluding to, Eureka, is that if the way it's organized in Google Classroom is not working for students, they do have other tools they can use to write it down. So like I even have my notebook right here where I keep my to-do list written down, even though I also have a Google Calendar. But maybe talking to your students about, should they, you know, use a Word document or the Braille note, you know, Braille note takers have their own calendars. They're not locked into the Google Classroom system. That's where they go to get the assignments, but they can certainly make their list or something that works for them. They can do that somewhere else.
Google has its own checklist called Google Tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I use that and I write down everything I have to do for work, and then I cry myself to sleep at night looking at how long it is.
I mean, and then also if you want to get a little like fancier, especially with Google or Android devices, is you can just tell your assistant, like, you know, hey Google, put this on my task, like, and that's a great way to start incorporating, you know, the voice controller, voice assistant.
I was going to mention in Classroom, it really depends on how you organize your class, because you can create different subjects inside of that. You could even, you know, week 1, week 2, week 3. So there you can use the structure of setting up the class to organize as well.
That's true. A lot of our teachers, though, are dealing with regular classroom teachers, semi-itinerates are setting up their own Google Classroom. I absolutely love that you guys are hearing from the tech team that maybe the solution to organization has nothing to do with tech. Maybe the solution is to utilize your students' own personal capabilities. And please don't forget that just because it's available doesn't mean your student needs to learn it within a program or a device. None of us utilize every single function of every single device. So don't always assume they have to stay with tech to keep track of their day.
One thing I realized with my student is when we were in a physical site, going class to class, it was easiest for her to take her phone, say, hey Siri, reminder, homework page, the date, the class, whatever she needed to put in there to know that she had homework that evening. Then when we transferred over to distance learning, mom was just crazy. Like, how is she supposed to keep track of all this stuff? And just like Adrian said, I told mom it didn't have to be any different than what she did in a physical site. Get out her phone, hey Siri, I have this, reminder, reminder, reminder. She deletes it when she's done. It's an easy situation for her, and so why change it? And it works.
Okay, I'm going to throw out another question. This came out earlier. It says, during our Zooms, my student shares his screen with me, and we work on assignments that are in the form of a Google Doc. On some days, the Braille display edits the Google Doc with success. On some days, it seems the Braille display will not insert words he types, but he can edit the doc using the laptop keyboard. Screen reader support is turned on in the accessibility settings. Do you have any other suggestions for this?
Make sure that enable Braille support is turned on. If that's turned on, after that, refresh the page. Turn off the Braille display, turn it back on. That would be my troubleshooting.
Yeah, I had that issue happen quite a lot when I was the tech teacher, and I just taught the kids like this pyramid. Okay, so first you make sure that's turned on, or turn it off and then turn it on. Enable Braille support, and then do the same for enable screen reader support. And then if that doesn't solve your problem, refresh the page. And then if that doesn't solve the problem, close your browser and reopen. So I would start by teaching them some of that troubleshooting step by step, from easiest and least disruptive to restarting your web browser.
And Vanessa, that usually fixed the issue? Mm-hmm.
I was having this issue quite a bit, especially back when Google was not working with the lists. Like if you had 1, 2, 3, it seemed like that was just a code within the document that the device didn't know how to handle. There is a, I was trying to pull up a Google Doc real quick, but there is a setting in Google Docs where you can, it's not something you want to do. You'd rather try to teach your student how to get through all the different types of codes that they put in for columns, for lists, for that type of thing. But if your screen reader is really, really having a problem with that in particular doc, and it has a lot of that type of stuff in it, I have found that if you click the delete codes within the doc, that it helps tremendously. It almost seems like it's confusing to the device when there's all those different codes that we can't see when we look at it, but they're there for a purpose. But it just confuses the heck out of the device. And so it has worked for me to do that more times than it hasn't. However, there are still times when that doesn't help either. So, but we've had that issue quite a bit.
There were a couple questions in the chat about math, and it's not something that I want to get into in this session, but Thomas from HIMSS, we're working on a math, like how to provide math remotely, a webinar sometime in the next couple weeks. So Thomas, if you can just maybe get some of the questions from what the teachers are using, and in order to incorporate that in the webinar.
So a couple of things pop up about Khan Academy as well. And if you guys are running into Khan Academy with a kid with a screen reader and it's not accessible, be patient and try another page. They have worked and made a lot of their content accessible with MathML, which pops up as math content in a screen reader, but sadly, not all of their site is accessible and not all of their site is completely consistent. But if you keep pushing around on Khan Academy, you should find stuff that's accessible.
Yeah, and Linda, in terms of how accessible are these lessons with her Chromebook and Apex, probably not accessible with the Apex. I don't want to say at all, but I would not even go down that route. And then Adrian answered that some of them might be accessible.
So
I think most of upper grade Khan Academy is accessible. Most of like late elementary, middle school, high school should be solid. Someone
had previously asked, and you might need to chime in here, how to change background color. Might need a little more information to help answer that question for you, but Eureka can talk a little bit about just accessibility on your computer screen. I'm assuming that might be what your question was.
Yeah, and if you're talking about background color in Google Docs, or if you need to change your color for the entire computer. So in Windows, there is a setting, I think if you type in the search box, invert color, in the Windows search box, you can change some of your entire computer to make it higher contrast. If you're talking about specifically in a Google Doc, then let me see. The only thing I can really think of is like background color, highlight color.
Google Accessibility offers an extension for high contrast too. I can put it in, which is pretty neat. Extensions are something you have to add in. Some of you in the districts won't be able to add an extension without your IT support, but there is a high contrast one. Otherwise, you'd be changing the color and then changing the color of the font, which makes you have to turn it around on the back end to submit it.
And I'm assuming that the Chromebook has its own embedded ways to work for accessibility.
Yes, with the Chromebook, there are, like in the vision settings, there are different ways where you can adjust. And also if your student is low vision and they're using, I guess not Chromebook, but if they have Zoom text, obviously there are those settings as well.
Would anyone like to ask another question? If it feels too long to type, you can go ahead and unmute and ask a question.
You guys are a quiet crowd.
I have a question. This is Mallory. I was wondering how to send BRF files through Google Drive to a Braille Note Touch Plus, and if it's possible, and if so, is Nemeth possible?
Can she repeat? I heard her and didn't process all at the same time.
I'm trying to figure out how to digitally send math through Google Drive, and was going to see if BRF files will work. And I was wondering if Nemeth could be in those BRF files on a Braille Note Touch Plus.
Thomas?
I've never tried.
Why? I mean, why? Thomas, go for it.
Yeah. So from what I understand, you can do the BRF files and have math in it. And what most people are doing is they're taking that BRF file and then working directly in Keyword to complete it. So they act like BRF is like a worksheet, right? So they'll read off that and then do the actual assignment in Keyword, and then also use Key Math with the Touch Plus. So that's how I found most people are doing it right now. So it's not optimal, but that's kind of the best way that I found so far.
Okay, that would be perfect, and then my student would be just fine doing that. So so if I'm on Duxbury on my laptop, I can type out Nemeth and save it as a BRF and put it in Google Drive for him to access. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he would have to download the BRF file, of course,
yeah.
and then just work on it from there. But yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
You can do that with any type of file that's going to be supported by any system you're using. You're just using Google Drive as a file share system at that point, rather than utilizing the Google suite of systems online. You're just sharing a document type.
Yeah, and actually in cases like that, oh, I got some feedback.
I can mute.
In cases like that, email, I know everybody likes to talk about using Google Drive and whatnot, but email is also a very applicable solution. If you're going to send a file if you're going to send one file to one student, you know, you could use Drive, but you could also just send an email with an attachment.
That's a good idea. Can I have another question? My student is using Google Meet on the Braille Note Touch, and he's getting a lot of feedback if somebody else's mic is unmuted. Has anybody else run into that, or is it just... I posted it on the Facebook, and some people were having problems and said to use Zoom, but Zoom is blocked on all of our devices. And I tried using headphones, and that also did not work.
Headphones should have fixed that. Normally what it is the sound, the microphone and the sound coming out of the computer or mixing, and causes that feedback.
Yeah, we tried yesterday, and it's like he is not echoing, but I'll be echoing if I'm talking to him unless he mutes his mic. So he tried the headphones yesterday, and they didn't have like an additional mic, so maybe that's part of it.
If he could plug in some like the earbuds that have the built-in microphone, try that and see that could well fix it.
Okay, thank you.
And Mallory, Letitia responded to your previous question, and she says when the student goes to a file in Drive, have him go to more options and then go to download. Then the student goes to key BRF to find the file they downloaded.
Thank you.
And then there was one other question, actually no, comment more from Rebecca, which I think, yes, we would love the link. She says, I made short little how-to videos on how to use the full screen and docked magnifier on a Google Chrome, I'm assuming Chromebook, and little handouts for my families for whoever was asking about Chromebox magnification. If you want, I can share with whoever needed that. And I think, as Eureka said, we'll go ahead and write up a document to share with all of you, because we have your emails now from when you signed into the webinar. So Rebecca, if you send that to us, we can add that in, because I think that might be greatly appreciated.
I did see Angela's hand go up a few times. Angela, did you have a question?
I was just going to chime in that our transcriber attended a webinar last week. This is back to the BRF files for math. And so we're working with our student. I don't know the ins and outs, but I can get the info and share it. Was it Mallory who was asking? That if it goes through Keymail, there's a better, you know, fit for the student to access it that way, rather than going through Google Drive like we normally do.
Did you say Keymail?
Email, yes.
Yeah. So like Thomas was saying, if you email it and the student opens it in Keymail, and then from there they would be able to open it into KeyMath.
Right.
On the touch. Yeah, that makes sense.
We definitely want to thank everybody for coming and participating. That hour went fast. Maybe time for one more question, but we do plan to host tea, Tuesday tea with AT each week. So we look forward to having you next week. There is one more question. Ashley is asking, is the Google support page the best place for hotkeys for voiceover for Google Docs, Classroom, etc., or is there a better website?
I'm in the process of writing up that. It's not complete yet. I'm not sure. You get little bits of good information around, and I'm sort of pulling things together, basically. I don't know of any one place you can go. I would say that, you know, I'd have to go to the Gmail documentation or the Google documentation and look and see to remind myself. There's not a lot on that out there.
I'm gonna put
not
in,
as much as on Windows.
Texas has a nice little wrap up that I'm going to put into the, here it is in the link.
Okay.
They did a nice wrap up. Texas has some really solid, they did these cute little anime videos about accessing the Google Suite as well that you can access from their outreach division. And they have, they kind of cover and walk through using Google Docs with a variety of tools, VoiceOver, JAWS, etc.
Okay, just wanted to wrap up here, and hopefully that this was helpful for you, and you know, for everybody to kind of like ask questions, or maybe even if you didn't specifically ask a question, when somebody else asked a question, you're like, oh yeah, I do struggle with that too. So really, we want this. The reason why we're facilitating this is to really get all of the teachers kind of together, and like we already shared at the beginning, to really just like share resources. And you know, just from today we had like so many links for resources, so we will definitely save all of those things and make that chat available for everybody, probably tomorrow or later this week. And then next week, I think Scott and Vanessa are going to be hosting JAWS Tandem or remote. I don't know, Scott, do you want to? Yeah, so remote access.
It'll be, I think, you know, because if you're going JAWS to JAWS, JAWS Tandem is perfect, but you may not be. So you may not have JAWS on your computer. So then we can talk a little bit more about, you know, using Zoom, because you can even control another computer through Zoom. So we'll cover remote access. Yes.
Okay. Great. And then the week after that, Stephanie and Vanessa are going to be hosting how to provide continued Braille support remotely, distance. And then the last week of May, Adrian and me, it's going to be free for all, open forum. Come with any question, and we will try our best to answer it.
We're also looking to advance this into. We actually had this plan cooking to some degree since before this whole coronavirus thing. So we're looking for input onto how to advance this in the next year and to do something similar. So it'll be a good time to bring in ideas and general needs, but also do answers to any questions. For all of you, a little sneak peek, or just announced, I should say, check out our webpage, our homepage. We just announced 3 different summer academies that are going to pull off this summer in a distance mode. I threw them on Braille and Teach. They're not the same as our usual summer academy, but they should be a wonderful way for your kids to get a little bit of exposure to each other and socialize and learn a few new skills.
All right, thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and end the meeting for today.
Okay,
bye.
Thanks, guys.